So, welcome um, to our community meeting this evening. We've got our normal folk. We've got Dan, Alex, and Dave. And I'm going to give it over to Dave first thing for a change of pace and let him talk about the ACK meeting.
We just shouldn't need to talk about it because everybody watched it and tuned in live and memorized the whole thing, right?
Oh, well, maybe those of you who didn't have to work today.
I
Hmm.
watched it
Or
during class.
Oh,
did you really?
oh,
Yeah, I watched it while
Yep.
working.
All right,
Excellent.
Dave. So off to
Excellent.
you, sir.
And I welcome any interruptions and any questions. The net of what was it was just I guess about 2.5 hours, so they kept it reasonably brief for federal meetings. There was feedback on the TG11, which was a safety target level of safety feedback, and basically the message was that this is an interim response from the FAA back to the AAAC. We presented the report with, I think it was 12 recommendations, and what the FAA did say is they accepted all but one. However, there's a big level of caveats on. They want to wait for the Beyond Visual Line of Sight Aviation Rulemaking Committee to time out, which is supposed to time out on March 4. And then they want to vet the information on the BVLOS ARC, and then they'll be able to consider the totality of the TG11 feedback. So this was a moment for me, spending 40 years in industry. The way that would have worked where I come from is the FAA has been privy to everything that's going on. They are joint chairs with the BVLOS ARC, so they know exactly. They have the current report, and sure, it's they're little changes now, but it's really getting down to minor edits. So they have the document. So one would think that they could have spent the last couple months looking at the TG11 output, going, we should be talking about this. And a number of the people on the Beyond Visual Line of Sight ARC are also working on the various tasking groups, like me. I worked on the BVLOS ARC, so did Dan. Thank you. And we're also on TG11. So just the way our federal government works, the good news is that the responses that we're getting back from the FAA are thoughtful. They are comprehensive, and so they're not blowing us off, and that's a real positive.
That's
We
good to
then
hear.
had questions, comments.
Oh, I just said that was good to hear. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. So, so then the next point they brought up was TG12. This was tasking group 12. This was the integration of aviation-specific STEM into the education of the United States, K through 12. And one of the points that we made in the report that we wrote up, it's critically important, is the federal government does not have much control over what happens in K through 12. So I found a Department of Education program that they worked with NSA, created a brilliant program to effectively open source a curricula plus teachers' curricula and send it out to those organizations and companies that make content for schools. And the way it would work is because the federal government would let an RFI, it would then become public domain. So these content providers could pick up this program. It's called CyberNet, and they can start from farther down the road with content that's well developed and then augment it. And the idea is to increase the number of teachers capable of teaching cybersecurity in our K through 12 programs. And so it's 8 through 12, pardon me. So my recommendation in the TG12 was recommendation number 9, which was we should do the same thing in the FAA. We've got precedent, which is a lot as in the federal government. We've got the Department of Education that was very willing to work with the FAA on this. So That's happily one of the one of the recommendations that Brian Wynn went into some detail as he was presenting it. If you're into any STEM education programs like that, it's about a 15-page written report. It's worth scanning in the ebook. The slides are very net, so they need the report behind it to give you a little bit of color as to what's going on.
That seems
Next
like that's
was-
pretty much true for the entire ebook, is that it gives you a hint, but unless you were there, like, you really don't know. And that's the way the whole meeting goes too. Like, the whole meeting is people talking about stuff that's not necessarily public, that the rest of the people watching don't really have the background to fully comprehend what's going on.
Yeah, that's well said, because if you think about each of these tasking groups, they're like a term paper written by a collaborative team across 3 months, and there's some really great people on it that we have access to. So we've got industry associations, academia, uh, law enforcement, aviation associations, manufacturers, etc. And it's a pretty good brain trust, and so it gets deep in a hurry. So I agree, Dan. You need to read the report. And the other thing that having been at this for 3 years with the DAC now AAAC is it's unfair to describe, or it's pejorative to describe the presentation as a rubber stamp, but it's a rubber stamp. I mean, it's a formality and an opportunity to say thank you, but the work's been done and it's all been vetted with the FAA before the final presentation.
That literally is like a third of the meeting is people saying thank you and patting each
Thank
other on the
you,
back.
thank you,
Gosh,
thank you. That was
Oh,
great.
that's
We
the
worked
wrong
so
time to-
hard.
It gets
Yeah, that
so sort of
it gets
tiring.
It gets tiresome. It really does. Yeah, but as I've come to see, that is absolutely
It's the way they
every
work.
one of these, every FAA meeting I've been in, that they're like that. But it's better that than the opposite.
I do wish that
So-
ebook would have been a little more informative, because it really was just nothing. Just very empty.
Which
The
section?
one with all the slides, particularly like the beyond visual line of sight one, was just that single slide.
Oh,
That
A
was it.
slide. Well,
That's
not
all
that
you
the
get.
actual meeting had any more meat to it than that, but
Yeah, I mean, the slide and the meeting were basically the same thing as far as we were concerned on that topic.
The really good point, and this, I'm slowly learning what to listen for. Since we started the BV loss arc, I've been asking the question of Jay Merkel: are we going to be able to publish this document from the FAA out to the public once we're done? And the first answer was, we're not sure. And then the answer was, we're pretty sure. And then today you heard it confirmed that Jay said we will be getting this document out. So it's over 224 pages now. It's really, there's some sections that are really worth reading. And so when it is released, we'll go over it. Then there are probably 50, 60 pages that are really valuable and really important to us. And so, yes, the BV Loss Arc is focused on commercial, but it's still really important to us. We think there will be a lot of knock-on benefit to recreational.
So Dave, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So, in your 3 years of working with the DAC, has your impression of the FAA's ability or desire to work with the general public changed in terms of regulations and whatnot?
I think it has. I think there was a step function change with the remote ID NPRM. I think it really set them back on their heels to get 53,000 comments, and from that point on, there was a really different view from the perspective of, we really should be listening to the public, and so yeah, I think that has improved. The other thing is that these are bright bright folks, and they're Maze Bright, right? So they now have a Secretary of Transportation and Secretary Buttigieg, and there is a big push on societal benefits. So the Beyond Visual Line of Sight ARC spent a lot of energy and solicited and got people who are, who you wouldn't have thought would have been invited into the Beyond Visual Line of Sight. Notably, people who were privacy experts, and some of them were associations, and some of them were organizers, and so good, so good for them. From it made, frankly, that made it, the discussions really difficult at times, because some of the privacy experts knew nothing about aviation or aviation regulations, but the FAA painstakingly, listened to that. The BVLOS ARC had a huge focus on noise, which I think was intelligent. And you heard about that today in discussions about the advanced air mobility, and about the worry that noise will likely be one of the leading inhibitors of air taxis and things like that. And I think that's also on target. So both of those, all of those points to me speak to an increase in interest of listening to the public, and that's really positive. And we'll put a plug for ourselves here. There's a new organization. Well, it's been recast, and so the UAS safety team was running for several years, and then it went quiet for about a year, and now it's been renamed, and we have two new co-chairs, Peter Dumont, and then from the FAA, Joe Mora, and the FPV Freedom Coalition is one of the organizations that's been accepted. And so it only took us a year to do of repeated pestering and applications, but we're part of that. And I mention that because we saw last June where the DAC vectored off TG-10 to the drone safety team. That said, the drone safety team is now considering whether they should accept this action item from the FAA and the ARC, or the AAAC. So so it's like, okay. Oh, and the drone safety team is a public-private partnership. I have to find out what the structure is, but a positive from the perspective of, and yet another effort to listen to the public, to the industry, to academia, to the various stakeholders in aviation.
I would have to agree with what Dave's saying, and the more we work with the FAA, the more it feels like there's at least some employees there who definitely want to talk to us, definitely want to help, want to make things better. But then the more you learn, the more you sort of figure out, well, they really get their direction from Congress. They really are in a tough spot between Congress and the Department of Defense and the Department of Homeland Safety and all these other conflicting things, and they're just put into a really tough spot, and we don't get to see a lot of that behind the scenes stuff.
Right. And so as the we remember, it was July 6th, 2016, when Laura Stubblefield presented to Congress, which then became the 2018 Reauthorization Act. And so she set up all of the challenges that we were facing in the Authorization Act that came out. And so now we have 2020. This year, 2022, is the year where the Congress will be writing, Congress, quote, will be writing the Reauthorization Act. And so we will have an opportunity, I'm sure, to advocate for that, both with the FAA as well as our congressional representatives. Not as lobbyists, but because we're a 501c3, not a 501c6, but as we will be able to do limited discussions with Congress, and will, as citizens, we're able to do that.
Absolutely.
Next up on the ACK this afternoon was TG13, which is the new tasking. And so, as you may have heard from the last, the name change incorporates air mobility. And so there is a yet another white paper that the FAA has written, and they want feedback on that. So this was the essence of TG11. This is hard because when they hand us a 15-20 page white paper, we first have to tear it apart, just page by page by page or paragraph by paragraph, and then try to also then step back and look at it and consider what areas are missing, etc.
And I assume, just
So-
like the Tasking Group 11, that this paper won't be made public, except maybe if you read between the lines of the report that's given to the FAA, you'll be able to figure out what was mostly in it.
That's gonna be my bet as well. It was conspicuous in its absence today, and so I think you're right on target, Dan. That's that's exactly my bet. Next ACT meeting, June. Oh, and also the other aspect was vacancies. So we've talked about that. I have submitted a second application. It was due January 10, 2022. So January 10 to February 23, not nearly enough time to process an application. A little tongue in cheek, but that is what we saw today. Is that we heard that there were 150 applications, and the process is moving along nicely, and the FAA anticipates that the Department of Transportation will approve the recommendations soon. So, as I was discussing with my wife, soon in the federal government usually means this year. So we'll see.
Yeah, I had in my notes
We'll
they're
see.
selecting new members and sending them to the Secretary of Transportation. So they may have already selected them, and they're kind of
Yes.
waiting to hear back
through-
on approval.
That was my bet too. With no, other than the words they were using, that was the sense I got
Yeah,
as well,
and
Dan.
I'm guessing, Dave, if you don't make it on the DAC or the ACT this time, it's could have something to do with they have enough people that are like you already on the DAC, since they were talking about diversity and inclusion. Sorry.
I'm unique.
I think it's the old guy factor.
He's got too much hair, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I gotta update my application.
There you
I'm
go.
young. Oh,
Your hair is
I'll,
not gray
lower
yet.
the age range by like a lot.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
Well, so yeah, that'll be disappointing if we miss out again. But we'll just keep at it because this is working, and we are definitely making a difference. Our impact on TG12 was absolutely material. Alex was working on that tasking group. I wrote a lot of the paper and did a fair amount of the presentation. So we at FPVFC are making a difference in what's getting submitted to the FAA. So Alex, thank you for your work on that. So y'all just more adulation and thank yous.
Pat yourself on the back there.
But yeah, that's right. No, but we really are making a difference, and I think the approach is working, and we're recognized across the AC as serious, polite, professional, productive, just like we respond to our NPRMs. I think, let's see, I think that was the top. Or any other agenda items did I miss from?
I don't think you missed any important agenda items. My other notes talk about. Jay mentioned there was over 200,000 completed trust people. Or he mentioned tokens because you can't be sure that each token was a person, but roughly 200,000 people probably took the trust. And
Yeah, I think they're missing it. Yeah, so Denny says, well, that means that there are about 200,000 people in commercial, so that means we're
Yep.
talking about 400. So like, stop. Their own documents, the FAA administrator's fact book states that by their estimates, there are 1.2 million recreational operators. There are an additional 500,000 Part 107 and other, and that doesn't count the more exotic, greater than 55 pounds. I guess that's 135. I think, Alex.
Well, it depends what you're flying under, because you can do over 55 recreationally.
Right, with a waiver.
Yep.
Plus, I would
So-
challenge, the reach of the message of the trust. While it's been strong, I would challenge that not everybody who flies drones knows about it.
Yeah.
One,
Right.
and number two, after the first kind of expiration of drone registration or pilot registration for recreational, how many people remember to renew, remember to go through those steps, so on and so forth. So has the message reached everyone it needs to? Probably not. Are there people flying without the trust? Yeah, probably.
Probably a
Um,
lot.
Yeah, I would
Now-
venture to guess that's true.
Now, this was an aspect that I felt they missed a trick in providing some sunshine and accolades to people who deserved it. And with the trust, Pilot Institute is far and away the leading provider of trust. And that's as you look at our website, that's who we recommend. We know Greg. Greg is a huge supporter of recreational drone enthusiasts. A good man, good company, and his product is excellent. So
And Flight
Where-
Test
and-
recommends them.
Mhm.
right. So good outfit, and that's they had an opportunity to say we really want to shout out to Pilot Institute, our leading trust provider, but they missed that. The other one is that they talk up 1 million Lance approvals, and they missed the opportunity to say with the people who will bring you Lance, notably the people who wrote before you fly, is Aloft. And so for us, we recommend when someone says, well, should I use a Lance app? We're like, yeah, you should use a Lance app. If you're in controlled airspace, you have to.
Right.
And, well, what should I use? We say Aloft.
Mhm.
Again, the product is free for recreational pilots, and the company is fantastic. And their CEO, John Hagrains, is a big supporter, and it's free for us in recreational. And John Hagrains is also an advisory board member of the drone safety team. So a lot of these, you're starting to see. We know the people, they know us, and they're, so it's working, and a good set of products. But that's
And I do want to say, we're not sponsored by any of these guys. We're not getting money from any of these guys.
Good point.
But it's the fact that we use their products. I did my trust at Pilot Institute. And I would utilize them, going forward. And same thing with, I use Aloft when I go out and fly for Lance. So I like it. I'm used to it. They make I've never had an issue with it. So, but yeah, there's other providers out there for all those things, but it's important that it's a trusted source. So,
Let's
right.
see.
Yeah,
what
these
el-
guys are helping. Anything else in your notes?
On
that
my
I missed,
notes,
Dan?
we already sort of touched on this. The membership was expanded from 35 to 41, so there's like 6 open positions for those 150 people who
Right.
applied. I'm going to assume a lot of those will have to be air mobility related people, even though there are a few on the DAC or ACK already. But why go through
Sure.
the trouble of renaming themselves, repurposing, make a bunch of vacancies if they're not going to fill them with this new purpose?
Yeah.
Curious about the community
if I-
advocate role.
Yep, and that was the other
Yeah.
part, is they added a community advocate, which he said was to provide insight and expertise to the increased drone and AAM traffic in communities. So basically, oh yeah, we know drones and AAM are going to be noisy and communities aren't going to like them. Who can we throw on here to represent that?
Yeah, that sounded like a privacy specialist. That's what thinking of the attendance. So if I get passed over on this tranche of additions, I won't be surprised. I'm with you, Dan, that they have to. They made a big deal out of changing the name, adding vacancies, so they can't simply, oh yeah, we'll just swap
Right.
in a couple of
Oh,
these folks.
And that was one topic, I guess, of the entire meeting that you jumped over, was that the LADOT gave a presentation on air mobility stuff and their plans for air
Yeah.
vertiports
so-
and air taxis and all that kind of
Exclusive
stuff.
rights. to the FAA airspace.
So yes, that was the point that Salida, who is an AAAC member, presented. You look in your ebook, and I'm following along with the pages, and then she says, "And here's my next steps and recommendations." And you notice how that slide stayed up for only a couple of seconds, and then it was quickly taken down. And then Jay Merkel said, we have to talk to the other, other organizations in the FAA, and there are other agencies involved. So that, Alex, you're on exactly the point I was going to bring up, is that there looked to be that the LA Department of Transportation was trying to stake a claim to
Oh no!
Oh
Yep.
no.
Oh no!
Somebody got him.
They're onto him.
Well,
He's
hopefully
been shut down.
he comes
Oh
back.
no!
One
All
of the other slightly interesting things as Dave comes back in here, farther on in the end of that meeting, Jay was complaining that she had a Jetsons photograph in her slides, and she's like, "What
Oh,
Jetsons
no.
picture?" And yeah, they've got just one of those little pictures of the car that goes doo 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 boo 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 boo.
Oh yeah,
Was in one of her slides, and
That's
Jay did
funny.
not like that was in there.
Oh goodness. Dave, you back, sir?
We see him.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, that was pretty comical. Timing,
Like right when he
timing,
was
timing.
like literally you left off with trying to stake and then all of a sudden gone. It's just like, oh, Dave's been canceled.
There was also a knock on my door.
Oh, it's funny.
Happily no, but I'm not taking the labels off my furniture.
So anyway, you were saying about the LA Department of Transportation
That they raised the point of that the LA dot sounded like, first they said, oh, of course the FAA is responsible for authorization of the NAS, the National Airspace, but would like some collaboration with setting the regulations. So and then David Silver jumped right on that point and said, we cannot have a patchwork of regulations. This would slow down innovation. So yeah, Alex, I agree with you. That point is critically important, and I suspect that this is going to come up in the DAC tasking. So we'll see how this goes forward. That's I think that's what I had about today's hack.
Yeah. Did anybody else who watched it have any comments or questions?
Yeah, we used to be able to say that it moves at a glacial pace, but of course glaciers move pretty quickly these days. So, what do they call it? They work in a different time frame.
Yep. Oh, we could segue into what it looks like Josh has up here. A lot of the people at the beginning of the DAC were praising the head of the FAA, who is
Steve Dixon has announced that he is going to be stepping down and stepping out as the FAA director. And he is citing family reasons for leaving. This is supposed to be a 5-year term, and he's stepping out after about 2.5 years. I also read another news report from Reuters that he personally stated he was not asked to step down by the White House or by Secretary Buttigieg, but in fact, when he told them he was leaving, they asked him to stay on. So this is for him. I think it's been a rough couple of years, I'm sure, with the FAA dealing with. He came on right after the Max, the Boeing Max, and he kind of had to rebuild the reputation of the FAA after those incidents. Those were resulted in some loss of life. And
yeah, if anyone's not familiar with that, there's a good documentary that just came out on Netflix about the Boeing Max and all kinds of stuff related to it.
346 people, I think it was.
Yeah, something like that. And not only that, but he kind of stepped into the middle of remote ID and a lot of other changes that were going on at the FAA. So, and he took over after about a year and a half of only an acting director. FAA went, or acting administrator, I'm sorry. They went a long time without somebody actually appointed to there. So,
yeah, it's also interesting to me how long Jay Merkel has been in his position. So I think he came in around 2016. So he's the executive director of the UAS Integration Office. So I think doing a good job, and definitely a thankless job, and it's not easy. But
absolutely.
yeah, that guy gets a lot of gas.
So it'll be interesting to see who the next administrator will be. But for now, you know, I think I mean, I didn't have a whole lot of great expectations when he was first announced. But to be honest, I think that there's been some changes at the FAA in terms of interaction with, like I asked Dave earlier, with the public and whatnot. So I think he's done a good job. So I don't have any complaints really. All right, next we have drones are they are utilizing drones in Australia to plant sunflowers. So we're seeing a definite increase in drone use for farming. We've seen a couple different companies, including DJI, release agriculture drones over the last couple of years, including some new ones. I think this year or late last year. But these ones are being used to plant entire fields of sunflowers for crops. Says the unmanned aircraft distributes 45,000 seeds per hectare with the aim of sprouting 30,000 plants. It says the sunflower crop, to the best of our knowledge, is the first sunflower crop planted entirely by drone. So a big agricultural drone that we use commercially spreads the seeds. There's been some skepticism around it, saying that sunflowers require a certain amount of spacing to grow correctly, and it's something that they've had to kind of overcome. So
yeah,
it's
I'm
kind
really
of cool.
surprised that a flying drone they've decided is a reasonable choice versus a on the ground kind of drone instead.
Well, I mean, flying definitely gets you more space quickly, I'm sure, versus something
you can
on the
drive
ground.
pretty fast.
The whole point, and they actually mentioned this in the article, is it's got a lot less soil disturbance and whatnot, so which could be good for.
Are they testing this because they want to plant sunflowers, or because they're planning on doing other things maybe that are more difficult to do with a tractor in the future?
Oh, well, I would imagine it's both a test and for crop purposes. So it says it does reference it as an experiment multiple times. So let's see. It says the experiment is now in full bloom, drawing in tourists from all over to enjoy the photo opportunity and learn more about modern non-invasive farming practices. Says using drones in modern farming is becoming a common practice more and more as the technology carries a lot of potential when it comes to saving the environment. Euronews Green recently reported about the Australian startup AirSea Technology, which is fighting deforestation by utilizing drones and artificial intelligence. So yeah, I mean, there was another I can't remember where it was, but it was probably a couple months ago where they're literally replanting entire countrysides of trees utilizing drones as well. So pretty cool. All right, let's see.
So the program is in full bloom and they're really digging in.
Nice one.
Oh, that's awesome.
It does say right there, yeah, the
right.
experiment is now in full bloom.
It sure does. All right, so this is an article in Forbes, and it's always fun to see some of our hobby making mainstream nowadays, and not in a bad way.
The person there is looking at the floor.
I know, right? It's funny. We had this conversation the other night where I can't fly sitting down anymore. Like, I have to stand. And Alex was saying when he practices, he stands, and then when he races, he sits. And Dave said, "You sit, right, when you fly?"
Always. I'm an old guy. I fall over if I.
The
The other tip I got from my close friend who is a fighter pilot is keep your head up, and don't be moving around, looking up, looking down. Keep your head stationary, and that helps with vertigo a lot.
That's funny.
Yeah, and I typically sit, but that's because I'm sitting in my car trying to stay warm or stay away from the mosquitoes.
You might get eaten out there, like, for real.
The 1 month of nice weather in Minnesota, then it's then the mosquitoes can carry you away.
Yeah, there's a couple of weeks in the spring and a couple of weeks in the fall, and that's about it.
That's funny. So this is in regards to the Drone Racing League. They doubled their broadcasts thanks to growing global interest. This is a really long article that goes into a lot of depth, so I'm not going to beat it to death. But
does it say how much viewership they have?
Yes, it does, and it's let's see. We all know what the Drone Racing League is. Hopefully, I want to say it was 250.
At the beginning where it said 250 million.
Yeah, 250 million. Let's see. Did I miss it? Oh, here we go. DRL more than doubled its broadcast from last season, offering its high-speed drone racing to audience across 6 continents, with 13 sport networks broadcasting into more than 250 million households in 140 markets worldwide.
I've not really watched it at all, but gosh, it would be great if they could throw in some hints that, oh, by the way, this isn't just a sport that's racing on TV. You can get into this and you can do it yourself. I assume people know that, but just think if we had even a fraction of that 250 million actually starting into the hobby.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because one of the people I work with, she was asking me, she's like, so my husband and I were sitting eating pizza, and he was watching drone racing at the pizza place.
The funny thing, go ahead.
Oh no, and she was like, that's the kind of drones you fly, right? And I'm like, well, sort of, kind of, yeah. And she's just like, he was really impressed by that. He wants to do that, It was just
I see one tease there saying they do have some how to get into the hobby little commercials between heats. The thing I hear a lot is that oh sure, people seem to assume that drones are really expensive, and so they don't even look into what it would take to get started, because it's like, oh, it's too expensive for me. But it isn't always that expensive for people to get started.
Not at all. And even, I mean, it's even less so once you get started. I mean, once you get like your
radio.
Exactly, those are the expensive parts, right? And once you get there, I mean, you can continue for relatively cheap.
$300 quad.
Yeah, or if you got one quad, it's just maintaining that one. A $20 motor here, $30 FC here, depending. Or if you're like Alex, 4 motors and a flight controller all at the same time. So the interesting thing that they mentioned in the article here that I really caught my attention when I was reading it was that it's a low commitment sport, in terms of each heat you don't have to wait long to see who's going to win. It's not like a football game where you're sitting there for 2.5 hours, right? It's low commitment. You can tune in for your favorite pilot, less than a minute later the race is done, you know who won, and you can move on. So it's interesting in terms of that. Does that work for the sport or work against it? Yeah, I'm not sure, but
it's designed for today's TikTok attention span.
It makes for very good videos.
Exactly. And it's funny
how I
too.
got into the hobby initially was I saw the drone racing videos and was like, well, that's really cool. And I got to looking into it. And when I first looked, it was still kind of expensive. But
Yeah.
then the last couple of years, it came down a whole lot. So then I jumped in, and that's how I started flying.
Absolutely, and I'm the same way. So the first video I saw was an old professor of mine from college posted on Facebook. I think Steele was the one flying, and it was a flight through the Miami Dolphins stadium. It was like a test flight where they had the gate set up, and it wasn't a race. It was just more so showcasing the track. And that's when I got into it. I was just like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever. How do I do this?
Also, when you talk about minimum commitment, I get it, from the consumer of the media. One of the things that struck me was an interview that Joshua Bardwell had of Min Chen, and they asked him how he practices, and he says, "Well, I practice about 100 to 150 packs a day," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh!"
Be sure you write that down in your flight logs and.
Nope.
Oh, an ASRS machine. If there are any events, make sure you log those.
Yep. Every time you hit the ground, put them. Yeah, send them to NASA.
Broken prop.
Oh, this slightly gets into a topic we skipped about the AAAC meeting, and that was, Dave, you had the opportunity to expand on when they were asking about new business, and one of the things that was brought up was getting people started at the various levels of drones and aviation, right?
Yeah, I'm hopeful that gets picked up by the FAA, because we've done a good societal benefit piece of work on gender neutral. We've done a good societal benefit piece of work on K through 12. And then we all know, anyone here, I would imagine, is asked by friends, family, as well as a myriad of questions in social media. How do I get started in this? How do I get started? And so it is both a commercial set of questions. How do I get started in thermography? How do I get started in inspection? How do I get started in videography? Could I use my skills as a still photographer and expand? How do I get into this hobby? How do I get into racing? How do I get started? So I think that could be useful from a perspective of both the industry people as well as the various associations, and help build a lot more goodwill outward. So it was very nice of Chairman Houston Mills of the AAAC to take that on, and that was my suggestion. And then he offered me a couple of seconds to expand in it, which is very gracious.
All right, so I think that's about good for that. This one is the FAA is pushing forward with its tests on the UTM for drone integration. So it says in an announcement earlier this month, the FAA announced that they would be moving forward with drone integration and unmanned traffic management systems. Beginning this spring, FAA tests UTM systems in the field. UTM systems are a critical piece of the full integration of commercial drones into airspace, not one single piece of technology. UTM is a framework that will allow unmanned systems to operate safely in the same airspace with manned aircraft. One of the pieces of language that stands out to me is they specifically call out commercial drones in this, as opposed to drones in general. But and that's one of the things that it looks like a drone with prop guards breaking
Yeah,
the glass.
that
Forget
little
it
image is but it talks about get eyes and ears in places too dangerous to send a person. Is it dangerous because the drone's there, or
the glass?
The glass. It really makes it look like there's a dangerous drone breaking glass, but I don't think that's what they're trying to do.
Who knows? I can't control the GIFs on random websites, but it says from the FAA announcement, UTM includes a set of services that are complementary to but separate from air traffic management services for manned aircraft. It's targeted towards small unmanned aircraft operations in airspace, generally flying below 400 feet, and builds on current rules and capabilities that enable airspace access and authorization. So UTM is something that was brought up before the remote ID, but kind of akin to remote ID, in which the utilization of unmanned aircraft system traffic management systems would integrate and be able to detail in live fashion all the UAS that are active in the airspace.
Right.
And one of the things they wanted to do was push that through network remote ID to get that information from the air through your phone or smart device out to the different UTM providers, and so that they could detail exactly where everyone was. But in terms of capability at the time and currently, I would still kind of suggest is that the infrastructure doesn't exist to make that a reality in all the places where it would be required. So if somebody's out doing a rural photo shoot, has no signal, which yes, there are still places that have no signal. Um, they wouldn't be able to take off, and it was a genuine concern, which is where we came up where we got the broadcast modules and whatnot, as opposed to having to connect to something with a network and send that information over the ether. So
Right.
um
UTM and BV loss. Let's see if I can not speak in abbreviations. Unmanned traffic management and beyond visual line of sight are the two areas that I would forecast are going to be the biggest regulation areas for in the next probably 5 to 15 years. And we are involved in both, and they're going to be really important to us because just as Josh was saying, we worked hard to try to say no to network remote ID, and the UTM folks really wanted network remote ID because that would make UTM a lot easier. And there is a ton of money behind UTM. So NASA's working on it. We're waiting for ConOps 3.0. Big document on how the operation's supposed to work. And the FAA wants to make unmanned traffic management completely farmed out to private organizations. So, and they are lining up right now. And if we don't get on it, this is happening outside of the United States. So there are a number of test beds that are coming up and becoming operational. So we're going to lag or follow the rest of the world unless we get these regulations out there.
And I mean, by no means, guys, are we saying that broadcast or sorry, network remote ID is not coming. I do believe that that is the ultimate plan for all of this, and but at the same time, it needs to not be a inhibitor of being able to fly. So that's kind of where it was going before in terms of the remote ID and PRM, and being able to mitigate that through 53,000 comments was a big deal. So, all right, I think we got time for one more. So I will skip a couple of these. This is an interesting article. This comes from LinkedIn and a company called SkyTech One. So part of this is them pushing their business, but at the same time, it's an interesting article on how FPV can be used for to benefit business. And they go through talking about their last article in which they introduced FPV videography. I don't think we need to go through that, but the number one reason they state that their clients love FPV drones is that it has a unique and jaw-dropping experience that captures the audience's attention within the first few seconds. Perfect for lowering CPM or CPV. And I think that's it's like clicks per minute or something like that. In terms of people staying on websites or on their content. I probably got that wrong. But at any rate, our latest video with the New York Public Library used FPV to thread the needle in the treasures exhibit. The tariff I'm gonna butcher this. Tara, digital production manager of the library, added it's a great way to get into spaces as we never thought we could have before. I like to think whoever has my job in 50 years will still be using that footage to showcase what the library looks like in 2021. Another added benefit of FPV drones is that they can showcase your space without numerous cuts, which allows the viewer to tour the space with more context and experience a one-of-a-kind, smooth, fluid feeling. Compared to a ground camera or traditional drone, FPV videography may decrease shoot times, editing times, and the overall length of your final video. And they go through one of the nomenclature that I'm going to take issue with is threading the needle. I think most people call that hitting the gap or shooting the gap, but hey, everybody's got their thing. But it says basically they can shatter the conventional rules of videography. FPV videography is renowned for flying through where no camera has gone before, flying through windows, gaps, and other openings. This is known as threading the needle, something very difficult to do with traditional cameras, but even at relatively fast speed, FPV drones can safely perform immersive bank turns, multi-story dives, or thread the needle between the legs of a performer, all while giving you smooth footage, something unheard of even with traditional drones. So
there's a neat aspect of this, which is there are videographers and still photography photographers coming into FPV, and this is where we can help by being inclusive and helping them out. There's a group in around Manhattan that are mostly videographers, and they've gotten into flying drones, and the photography and the videos that they take is just stunning. So certainly I've been shooting still photography with 35 millimeter, then digital SLRs for over 50 years, and I am nothing in comparison to the photos that these folks produce. Just we can learn from them, and we can certainly help them with FPV. And this is just, there are a number of different industries where this is happening. We're seeing skilled people come in, and they could really use some help on FPV, and we can help.
Yeah, I've seen more and more really good versions of videos like this ever since that like bowling alley video went viral a while back. And especially that same company has done quite a few really good ones just like that. And yeah, they keep popping up all over the place.
Well, and I would say, even from within our own ranks, you got Johnny FPV.
Yeah.
Who's,
have you seen his latest video today?
No, I didn't. I got to check it out. But I mean, him working with, Red Bull and whatnot, he's been putting out some amazing stuff, as well as use of FPV in feature length movies nowadays. It's getting more and more out there, and people are understanding what it's capable of, and all these guys are coming into the it's hard to even call it the hobby anymore. It's more like coming into the community, right? And I mean, it's just growing and growing and growing.
The only thing I don't like about watching Johnny FPV's videos is that like I want to be that good. I want to make videos like that, and there's no chance I'm going to, because I'm not going to be flying like a $4,000 camera, and it's just so darn impressive. His last video is like he's chasing, is it MotoGP or something, like motorcycles going really fast, and the video makes it look like he's inches away from these pilots with really, really good quality camera.
Yeah.
Top speed of MotoGP is 205 miles an hour in the straights.
Oh my goodness.
That's fast.
Well, and also keep in mind, you're not putting in the 150 packs like Minchan, right? So
nope, not even close.
So, and they go through, I'm not going to, go too much longer. I don't want to go over, but they talk about when not to use FPV, when you should use FPV. And again, this has got some definite interesting articles going, or ideas going on here. So I definitely recommend it for a read. So, but at any rate, I think that's all I've got this evening.
There's no FPV in trains.
I would actually challenge that. I think that's possible. I think you and me, Alex, let's go do it.
Properties under
Inside
1,000
the
square
train.
feet?
I think we should get NERC first.
What's that?
I said we should get NERC first.
Ah, come on, we can do it. We can do it. It's fine.
The
And
next thing you know,
honestly,
next
property's
week's
under 1,000 square feet.
next thing you know, next week someone will have a video flying a whoop or a Cinewhoop through a train from the very beginning to the very end, and they'll have people opening the doors between the cars. And
That's funny. All right, Dan, you got anything for us this evening?
My focus was all on the FAAC meeting this week.
I love how that's become a thing. Alex, you got anything for us, sir?
Not sure if people saw, but there was a drone light show on AGT a couple of nights ago. I can send the links in here. Pretty cool. It was done by Verge Aero. They're based out of Philadelphia. And so they did a fairly simple show, but it was enough to convince a lot of people that drones are cool.
All right. I'm gonna have to watch that. That's cool.
So, other than that,
And
nothing else.
the big multi GP race, right? That's a thing.
Oh yeah,
now.
the Milwaukee one. That's April, late in the year, late in the month of April. Late in the month of April, I think 28, around then.
Okay. Excellent.
2 weeks after Mayhem, which is the first weekend of April.
Yep. So,
and then when is Rampage? Is that in May?
May
right?
14th, 15th.
Get your tickets now.
And then we got Flight Fest coming up as well in June. So end of June.
Yeah.
So lots of good opportunities to get
IO
out.
also in June, I believe.
Get out, get back in the community, meet your friends, all that good stuff. Get some flights in. So, all right. Anybody else have any?
Oh yeah, that's
any
right. One more
questions, comments? Oh, what do you got, Alex?
The Global Qualifier Track Design Contest. The top 9 tracks have been released. They're on Velocidrone for people to try out, and you can vote for your favorite one on MultiGP. And the voting closes Friday, so test the tracks, pick which one you like, and put your vote in. And then we'll have our Global Qualifier track for this season.
Nice. All right. So, anybody else have anything?
Dave, do you have any updates on the ASTM for remote ID stuff? People seem to ask that question quite a bit. Like, when is there going to be a standard for this? When are remote ID modules going to be available?
Yeah.
Good question. Yeah, some balloting is in process, and so that started several weeks ago. So early March, we should be, as they would say in Texas, God willing, and the creek don't rise. And the process is you go through a ballot. If someone votes no, then you have to stop and resolve their issue. And so we've been through balloting once. We hope that we get all positive votes. Then early March, the ASTM document, that's an updated standard to the F-34, or it's the remote ID updated standard. That'll go to the FAA. We hope that the FAA quickly approves it. That will become a means of compliance, and that is for both the standard and broadcast standard remote ID, as well as the broadcast module. And then a manufacturer would only need to complete a declaration of compliance, which would save them about a year worth of energy.
Well, that's good because they don't have a year.
Yeah, yeah. The standard remote ID has to be incorporated by September 2022 this year, and so we do know that the major manufacturers were trying to figure out how to get that done with software updates only. That may or may not be new models. And certainly we've got till September 2023 for broadcast modules, when we have to, as the operators, we have to comply with the remote ID by that date. Absolutely right. Yeah, this is getting very. We had
It's down to the wire at this point.
we wanted to have the standard out to the FAA back in August, and here we are coming up in March. So yeah, it's late.
Well,
Good
hopefully
question.
people can implement that quickly to get with the standard remote ID.
Yes.
I'd hate to see that hamper the industry. So, all right. Well, I'm gonna let everybody go unless anybody's got any questions, comments, concerns, ideas. All right.
Yeah.
Well, with that, we'll go ahead and wish you all a good night and have a great upcoming weekend. Hopefully, it's warm enough to get out and fly for a lot of you folks. So
Hopefully see you all again in 2 weeks.
absolutely. We'll talk at you later. Have a great night.
Thank you. Have a good evening.